Welcome aboard Flight Attack, your non-stop service from Vulnerability City to Defense Fortress. Please fasten your seatbelts as we take off for the heart of cyber adversaries, tactics, techniques, and procedures. I will be your flight attendant today. My name is Lex. I am a cybersecurity engineer of SOC and Blue teams at MITRE. I've been there for almost 3-ish years. Previous to that, I was at the DoD. I was an Exploitation Developer, digital forensic analyst, and threat hunter. So I've had experience in both offensive and defensive sides. I've spanned the gamut by now. I am a DMV native, born in DC, raised in Maryland. I've been here my whole entire life. I've never left, right? And I'm an avid lover of behavior analysis. I feel like at the TTP level, which is the top of the pyramid of pain, is very pivotal for defenders so that we can help bolster our defensives and try to get ahead of the adversary, hopefully one day. So let's go over some pre-flight checks. First, what is MITRE ATT&CK? MITRE ATT&CK is the knowledge base of adversary behaviors. It's a model to help you learn what happens when an adversary tries to get in, what happens when they've gotten in, and what do they do after they've gotten in. Some key points, it's based on real-world observations, There's no proof of concepts. Everything that's in ATT&CK is based on what I've seen in the live, real time, from people who are seeing it day to day. It is free, open, and globally accessible. We want everybody to use it. Students, organizations, you on an everyday basis, we want you to see what's going on. And this is in line with MITRE's public interest mission, right? And because it's open source, it's a common language for everybody to use. Let's say back in the day, one company was talking in one language, another company's talking in another language, and they just did not understand it was not effective. So MITRE ATT&CK tries to bring that goal together of helping people talk in the same language that everybody can understand and everybody can do a good job at their day-to-day work. It is also community-driven, right? Our mission is driven by people who give us information so that we can put into this framework. So if you see something and we don't have it, contribute it back to us. It comes directly to me, right? So that we can put it in and we can help evolve and enhance this framework moving forward. Defenders typically have a lot of questions. So MITRE ATT&CK is very known for their offensive side, their red side, which is the technique description, and then the CTI side, which is their reporting that gets contributed back to us, all the references that we get in ATT&CK itself. So where is the defensive side? Where do we live within this framework? We have questions about how we can use ATT&CK. How do we make defensive recommendations back to our company? What sensors and tools can we utilize to help collect this data? What data are we collecting, right? What behaviors are important to us? And so we're gonna go through some of these questions and answer some of these questions by the key features of what is on ATT&CK based in the defensive section. We've come up with a 6-step process, and I'm gonna call them our stops for today because we're on a flight, right? But our 6-step process on how we can get to that end goal or that end destination of making defensive recommendations. We have determined prioritizing which techniques are important to you, researching those techniques, researching defensive options that are open to you, what are the capabilities and constraints of that organization that you're trying to make defensive recommendations for, some trade-offs that you have to consider when getting to that point, and then ultimately the end goal of making those defensive recommendations. So first, when you're trying to prioritize which techniques are important to you, you want to think about the red team tools, CTI, or cyber threat intelligence, how you're collecting the data for your organization, what tools the adversary is using, and any other things surrounding that. That's going to be your first step in saying, what should I be looking at? Next, we're going to get to our first stop, or our first step, and researching those techniques based off of how you prioritized it. In this example, we're going to look at CTI reporting. We saw APT39 was using spear phishing emails with a malicious attachment and/or a hyperlink. So we have some key pivot points in here. We have spear phishing, we have emails, we have a MITRE ATT&CK technique, which is T1204. We have malicious link, malicious attachment, and we have APT39 and Cobalt Kitty. There's a lot of key words in here that we can pivot from as a defender. So let's go through some of the things that you can do with ATT&CK, and once you get all of this information. You're gonna go to ATT&CK. You're gonna go to the right side of the page, you're gonna see a search bar. You're gonna type in some of those keywords that we just went over. user execution, T1204, spear phishing, malicious attachment, malicious link. In this instance, I'm going to research T1204, and it's going to bring me to user execution. At the top of the page, you're going to see that adversary description explaining what this technique is all about. But if you scroll down a little bit, you're going to see this procedure section. And it's going to give you some softwares and groups that have also utilized the same technique, and what do they do when they use this technique. You see these red lines here that explain, like, hey, ABT 32, 33, and 39 all use this technique. Black Tech, Cobalt Group all use the same similar technique where they're using emails containing a malicious link, containing a malicious attachment, and trying to do something dirty to your system. This is important information. We found our key technique that we want to prioritize for our information, so let's figure out what other options that we can do so that we can make a defensive recommendation to our organization to say, you need to be worried about this. And our next step, we're going to go over some research, and we're going to research some defensive options. MITRE ATT&CK has defensive options that you can look at. We have our detections, our data sources, cyber analytics, and mitigations. So detections is like our high-level overview of detection strategies that explain what the adversary behavior is doing. And then you have the data source level, because detections is a little high overview level. Data sources is like the in-depth level of collecting logs and sensor information that explains what that behavior is, what type of a behavior that is. Outside of data sources, there is a subcomponent, so there's data components, is the activity, action, or metadata of that information you just collected. So let's say, and we'll get into an example, actually, I'll wait for that. Cyber analytics is going to be your ML version of detection queries. You say you found the adversary, you found this bad activity, and you did it by hand. Next time, you don't want to do it all by hand again. You want it to be automated. So that's where your cyber analytics are going to come in. They're going to be detection queries you can put into this SIM, this tool to help you find that activity faster. And then lastly, mitigations is going to be your configurations and other like security controls that are going to help prevent this technique from moving forward. So those are 4 important areas in attack that's already there, free and open source for you guys to utilize. So let's go back to our example. We had T1204, user execution. We're trying to stop a user from executing a malicious link or downloading a malicious file because they got it from a spear phishing email, right? When you scroll down the page a little bit more, you're going to pass procedures, you're going to pass mitigations for a second. We're going to go back in a second. But you're going to see this detection section. When you think about spear phishing and you think about something being downloaded, what happens on a computer? It's going to create a file. So our data source, which is something we're going to collect, is going to look for file monitoring. That's important. From the data component level, we're going to look for the creation of that file. And so here, you'll see you have file creation for this detection. That's your first start. You're going to read this open text area that's going to say, what are we actually looking for? We're looking for a newly constructed file that was downloaded. Easy peasy. Or so you thought. Something that we've included into ATT&CK more recently is including where you're going to collect this data from, what SIM is going to do, what your sensors you're going to look at, what actual event IDs that you need to be worried about. And so you'll see in the second red line, we say, hey, use Sysmon event ID 11. That's going to be your file creation. Sysmon is openly, free, accessible to everybody to use for your organization, so that's why we have it here, because everybody can use it. Remember, we're free and open source. And then from the analytic perspective, we've given you an example of how you can create this detection query moving forward for your organization. For a spear phishing email, this is not so much the right example, but you get an idea. You're going to use your analytic to look for a file that was written to System32. Theoretically, this is going to work, right? You're going to look for a .bat script file that was downloaded to your system. You're going to utilize your Sysmon sensor tool that we mentioned earlier, and we're going to look for event code 11, which is your file creation. This is how you structure your detection queries or the start of your analytics so that you can put it into your SIM. Okay, so that was a good example for the first 3. What about mitigations? ATT&CK has mitigations. All right here for you guys, right? So for mitigations for user execution, you got execution prevention, network intrusion prevention, user training, telling your people not to click the malicious link, guys, okay? I've been in tech for 10 years. How are we still clicking the malicious link? If it looks shady, don't click it. It's just that easy. But we gotta tell you guys, right? So user training, training your people not to click the malicious link so that you don't get this malicious download, okay? Again, attack has both mitigations, detections, data sources, and cyber analytics to tell you all these things, so it makes your day easier. So that was our stop 2, doing research on the defensive options. I gave you all the answers. We're gonna go to step 3, where we look at the capabilities and constraints of your organization you're trying to make those defensive recommendations for. Consider your collection, your deployment, and your response. Let's say your organization already has Sysmon for a collection source. Easy peasy, you have the data source that you're looking for. So you don't have to really do anything new. Possibly new analytics. I just showed you how to look for a file in System 32 for a bash script. Can you add that to your organization? It's an easy win. Looking at the deployment. Are these products already deployed in your system, or do you need to consider something new? Sysmon is a little tedious where you have to do it on hand, on-prem, but maybe you want to add an EDR product or NDR product to kind of help move your process faster, right? And then the response, you got something malicious going on here. How fast can your people respond to the incident? What is the amount of people that you need to respond to this incident? So these are the things like user constraints, usage patterns that you need to consider when you're trying to figure out the capabilities and constraints of your organization. That was an easy stop 3, okay? Stop 4 is even easier. Determine your trade-offs. What's the risk and what's the reward? What's the positive, what's the negative? How do you identify the options that are gonna fit into your organization? Like I mentioned, you have Sysmon in your organization. You don't have to use another tool. You're good, that's a positive. You have a large corporation that has a lot of team members and the amount of hours it's gonna take is not gonna be a lot. That's a positive. You don't need to hire any more people. You don't need to bring in any other tools. Let's say you're a small organization, you need that EDR product to kind of help out, and that's a cost that comes with it. Is it worth the risk of the money and the people and the time that's going to take to bring these tools into your organization to help out with making those defensive recommendations or finding these detections for this adversary behavior? Does none of this fit? Like, are you guys not good in detections? You guys have a small SOC or a small incident response team, and it's just going to make poor morale trying to work long hours. That's a negative. It's not a cultural fit, right? So you have to really consider your organization, the capabilities and constraints, and what are the trade-offs for the risk or the high reward when you're trying to bring in these options or recommend these options. Easy, stop 4, okay? We're gonna get to step 5, making defensive recommendations. This recommendation layer that I have here is very CTI focused, but it can apply to the defensive side. So you have your policy, your risk and acceptance, your tactical, your operational, and your strategic. So from your tactical standpoint, think about when and where the threat happened. Looking at the immediate dangers, how you're collecting your data, where's the malware signatures, IPs, URLs, log files, those are things you think about. From the operational, it's where an attack may come from and how likely that attack is to happen. Think about your vulnerability management, your malicious tools, your traffic, the implementations of how they're trying to do this activity. And then your strategic side, which is kind of my favorite, but it's who is targeting and why. So that's like the attack types, the attack trends, long-term planning, trying to figure out how we can stop these adversaries from moving forward. Remember, behavior analysis. We're trying to get better, guys, okay? So that was super, super easy. We went through all 5 steps. We gave you all of the answers. Of course, attack doesn't have it all, okay? I'm missing some things. That's why I still work, okay? I still have a job because I can still add things. But there's a lot of good things starting there for you guys so that you can get to that making defensive recommendations. So some use cases on how people can utilize what we're giving to you and attack. You have your defensive gap assessment, your behavior analytic development, and your SOC maturity. Let's say you were missing the Sysmon. You were missing the file creation or the file monitoring. We just told you in attack you need file creation and that you need to look for these other collection sources. You need to implement these tools. That tells you, hey, maybe I need to look at what my organization is giving and how I can fill some of these gaps so we're not missing that spear phishing technique or that user execution technique that's downloading a malicious file. Behavior analytic development, we gave you an analytic to kind of help that ML perspective or that automated perspective of like, what is the adversary doing from a behavioral level? We're not just looking at the TTPs, we're not just looking at the IP addresses, the URLs, or anything like that. We're looking at the behavioral level, and that's what those analytics are for. And then at the SOC maturity, you see all the work that comes with doing detections, right? You saw the strategy, the operational, the tactical recommendation layer. You saw the mitigations and the detections and the analytics that come with it. Can your SOC handle that? Are they adapt to respond in a cyber incident or a cyber attack or when something malicious happens, right? So that's how you can utilize attack in these three perspectives. Okay. My day-to-day got easier. Did yours? We gave you how to identify the technique by giving you the adversary technique description and the TTPs and the ID names and everything like that, the procedures that tell you what the software is in the groups and how they used it. That's all there for you. We gave you the detections, how you're detecting it, how you're finding the incident, how you're collecting the data, how you're going to automate that to find the incident so you're not doing it on hand all the time. And then we gave you the protection layer, which is the mitigations. How can you effectively implement those safeguards to make sure that this adversary is not utilizing this technique again for your organization? I know that was super fast, but thank you. Any questions? Throw it at me. I'm open. You won't hurt my feelings. Yes.
Numbers that you put in of how good your log sources are, how well your detections are. There's something that attack can help, show your leadership, like I'm improving, or this is our posture, and it's going on.
Yeah. So for the people in the room who didn't hear, can you use attack to measure essentially your organization from a defensive or a detections perspective? The answer to that is attack has an attack navigator, right? It shows you all the techniques, it has all the relationships built into it, and so you can ultimately put in those data sources, look at the detections, look at those mitigations, and see how that maps up that way, where it's a color, and it's more of a numerical value for you. Outside of that, there is also an Excel spreadsheet that gives you the same information, all of the relationships, all of the detections, the data sources, the mitigations that you can look at, and compare that to your organization of what you have and what you don't have. Cool. Any other question? Yes.
So in my organization, CTI, folks would report on using the attack navigator. Here are the things that we were seeing from adversaries we care about, what ATT we care about. The thing that we would run into, though, is on the navigator, on the attack navigator site itself, things that were being attributed to APT 39 or APT 20. Some of them, there's the gap in reporting. Some of the APT groups, the descriptions haven't been updated. So we would fill that in for our organization. But my question is MITRE concerned with attributing TTPs to APT groups, or are you solely interested in the TTPs and the technical side itself and letting vendors and other folks deal with attribution?
That is a good question. Okay, so let me repeat the question. Does ATT&CK do attribution, or are we letting the organizations do the attributions themselves? I will say there are some things in ATT&CK that are not attributed fully to campaigns, but they all should be attributed to a software or a group. Yeah, I would say that. So I think it's yes and no. If there's things that are not intact, because we don't have everything, I would say that that's a spot for you to fill where you can contribute that information back to us so that what you're seeing is also what we have and we can give it back to the community, right? And then anything else that it should be there for you to see. And if it's not there, again, contribute it back to us. Cool. Oh, wait, I'm gonna get this one in the back. I saw you first. Yeah. So repeating the question back for everybody who didn't hear. A lot of SOCs and blue teams are worried at the lower level pyramid pane, which is just the IOC level. And MITRE ATT&CK is very good at giving the behaviors at the TTP level. So how can we switch going from the IOC level to the TTP behavioral level? I would say that you do need both at the end of the day. So when you look at analytics, you're utilizing those IOCs to enhance those analytics, right? You're putting the IP address in there, you're putting that process name. Those are still important. I would look at the false positive rate of what your organization is able to detect. If it's not working, when you're trying to detect some of these TTPs, maybe you should start considering the behavior aspect of like, what is happening under the hood that IOCs can't answer? And that's a way that you can move forward. Cool. Next question. Yes.
It was just more of a comment on the thing about ATT&CK. ATT&CK doesn't do rolling releases. They have a release every so often. The next one's next Thursday. So if it's a very recent activity you're seeing from ATT&CK that hasn't been attributed yet, keep an eye out. ATT&CK 15, I think, comes out on Thursday.
Tuesday.
Sorry.
Yes, we are.
I had everything planned for Thursday.
Yeah. We are really in the ramp down. We're getting ready for release, running around like headless chickens because it's Tuesday. Yeah. Cool. Next question, comment? Yes. Okay. The question, how can you utilize ATT&CK to focus the data that you're collecting? Defenders typically have to see all the things. We have to know all the things, right? And so it's a lot. It can be thousands of terabytes that you're looking at on a daily basis from your SIM. So how can we shortchange some of that with the help of ATT&CK? ATT&CK has been implemented in a lot of places. This is the benefit of being open and publicly available, right? So that means people have built dashboards, they have built analytics, they have built detection strategies that are focused on the tactics and techniques and some procedures, but the tactics and techniques of ATT&CK itself. So look at some of those. They will be able to help you kind of like funnel down into what specifically are you looking for, and that's important to your organization.